Ouch, I just got a gnat in my eye. Hi, this is Jeff Welch from Welch Family Homestead. And it's at the end of summer. We're going into that season right now where the sap is dropping in the trees. We just went through what we call dog days. Dog days is a time of the year that if you grew up in the country, you grew up in the South, you know what that means. And what that means is several different things. I won't go into that. Maybe I should do a video on dog days, but that's not what the video is about today. Today, the video is about a cool subject called symbolism. It seems like we're in that era of history where everything is about symbolism. And what does it have to do with homesteading? Homesteading is about freedom. Homesteading is about our liberties. Homesteading is about being who you are without giving in to all that symbolism and what everyone else in the world wants to label you or to cause you to think a certain way. And yes, I'm very much into being someone who is free, someone who has the right to make his own decisions about his own life, about his own territory, about his own space. And that's what homesteading is all about. So thank you for joining me here on the Homestead channel here at Welch Family Homestead. And I hope that you subscribe and become one of our followers and listen to all of our videos, because hey, they're all over the place and we talk about everything and anything, and especially animals and pastures and fences and barns and gardens and all the cool stuff that comes with a farm. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a tour here real quick before I got into the subject. And I found something really cool the other day. So right here, been cleaning out an area, all this area here. Let me back up so you can kind of see what we have here. First of all, this is a huge pile of mess. I mean, a huge pile of mess. I had been in the construction business years ago, put many years in the construction business, bought this land about 22 years ago, and along this branch, there's a branch that goes right down through here. Along this branch, I had excess scrap materials all the time. And so I'd store the excess here. I said, okay, I'm gonna store it here. If I need it for the next job, I'll just come up here and get it, bring it back to the next job, what have you. Some of it I did, some of it I didn't. Consequently, over 16 plus years, this material, most all of it has completely rotted. It's almost turned into what we call compost. However, I can't use it for compost because much of it, some of it's plywood, some of it had finishes on it, some of it had plastic in it, some of it had other things in it, and I just don't feel comfortable turning this into compost because it's definitely not organic in relation to the way I want to treat the farm. So some of it's organic, some of it's not, but we're removing all of it and we're taking it to a clean sweep all the way back to the branch. And when we were doing this the other day, I have to show this to you. This is really cool. So I was down in the branch, and this was an old farm from years and years ago, a really old farm. As I was going through the branch down here, and in the branch, as you can see, it flows very nicely here. But check this out, okay? Check this out. So I'm gonna turn my camera around, so hold on one moment. So as I was digging in the branch, I found this old cast iron kettle. I mean, it's old. It was very old. It was actually upside down like this in the stream. I thought I had found an old clay pot, but it wasn't. It's an old cast iron kettle. It's missing the lid and it's missing the handle, but this is a cool find. I also found this glass, drinking glass, which I can tell you, I think I know what this is. Back years ago, they used to sell snuff, like dipping snuff, tobacco, in glass jars like this. Also jams and jellies. That might have just been something like that. And then there's some old top pieces, porcelain out of some old mason jars. This is an old crushed coffee pot. And this is an old lady's shoe. Found a few of those and a few other things. So we found things over time that I had interest. Found pieces of old wagon wheels, things like that. But I seriously don't think anyone has lived on this property for well over 100 years. And we've kept it organic the whole time we've had it. And we've kept it up pretty nice, actually. It looks pretty good, but we still have a lot of work to do on it. So anyway, I did save some materials as I was digging through all this. And when I say digging through it, I have probably 400 feet more of cleaning up to do down through here, of where I've stored materials. And some of those materials I will be able to use on the farm here. I have a stack of metal roofing that I'm excited about. So anyway, as you can see, I keep this grass cut like a lawn. I mean, that's a carpet right there. This field is about the size of 2 football fields, and a great place to play ball, a great place for the kids and the grandkids to play. And we've had a lot of fun here. So in the process of digging through the materials, I have a lot of fencing to put up, but I also have been pulling out a lot of fence posts that we laid up underneath a lot of the material to keep it off the ground. But over the 16 years or so, you know, the ground built up with leaves dropping and it naturally composting, and eventually roots started growing through the materials, and wasn't long before the materials just started decaying and turning into compost themselves. But look at all of these fence posts that I have been able to pull from all this. It's amazing. So I'm gonna be able to put up a lot of fence with these fence posts. And right over in here, I have a lot of metal roofing stored from about right there to about right there, okay? And it goes back through there, and I think I'm gonna have enough metal roof to put a roof on an extra porch on the cabin, and maybe an extra shed that we're building, as well as a chicken coop that we're building. Anyway, I won't go into a lot of that. Let's get into the subject of symbolism. Symbolism is the subject today. Isn't it human for all of us to embrace symbolism to a certain point in various forms? It could be flags, it could be hand gestures, it could even be phrases. Just like on our coins here in the United States, we have a phrase called "In God We Trust," right? In God we trust. And symbolism are attachments that we have to an image. It could be a brand, it could be a logo, it could be a flag, it could be a statement, a phrase, a word. It could be almost anything. Some symbolism is bad, some symbolism is not bad. Did you realize that back in the day, years ago, when we pledged allegiance to the flag, this was years ago, we didn't put our hand over our heart when we pledged allegiance to the flag. In fact, we held our hands out like this right here when we pledged allegiance to the flag. Can you imagine a crowd of people with all their hands out like this right here pledging allegiance to the flag? But because of the Great World Wars, because of what happened in Italy with and Germany, when it come to Nazism and communism, dictatorships that had gone awry and caused a lot of hurt, pain, and death among many, many people around the world. In the 1940s, it was voted in by Congress to amend how we do the a pledge of allegiance to the flag. So instead of everyone in a big crowd holding their hands out like this, kind of like what you would see in a picture in where Hitler would be standing up on a stage or whoever, and they would all have their hands out like this, we changed the way that we did our pledge of allegiance to the flag. Symbolism. This is a symbolism. This is a symbolism. So in the early 1940s, Congress changed it from this to let's put our hand over our hearts. Let's change this. Let's not be associated with this appearance. Prior to the World Wars, this was not considered a bad sign or symbolism when you held your hand out like this. In fact, think about it. When you go to churches and you see people raise their hands, even the Bible says raise your hands, and you'll see people praying in the audience and their hands will be raised. Okay? And that's not looked at as being bad. But when you see people pledging allegiance to a flag where everyone's hands are stretched out straight, that would give you a little bit of different perspective today, as history has changed the way that people look at this. So Congress, after 20 years of controversy around people pledging the allegiance like this after the war, about 10 more years after the war, then it was changed in Congress to put your hand over your heart. So symbolism became something from positive to negative. It moved from negative to positive. And this was considered positive. Now in today's world, if you see someone that's a politician and you're trying to find fault with them, we've seen this recently over the last 10, 15 years, where if a politician or a president didn't put his hand over his heart when he's doing the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, it's almost like, how dare him not put his hand over his heart during the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem or what have you. And because here we are, we're patriots, right? We want to see that symbolism. Symbolism is important, and we as humans embrace symbolism quite frequently in our lifestyles. Now also the rainbow. I mean, you look how it's changed from the way that the rainbow is depicted as a symbol. You know, it started out as years ago, way before we were around, thousands of years ago, after the great flood, Noah, and there was 8 people on the ark. They get off of the ark, but the most beautiful thing is God gave them a gift, and it was a rainbow across the sky. And it was God saying, when you see this rainbow, you're reminded of my promise that I'll never destroy the earth again with water. And that was a promise. We always looked at the rainbow as God's promise to man. It had that meaning. And over the last couple of decades or so, maybe three decades or so, that has become a different meaning to some people. I had someone just recently, in fact, my daughter took some pictures of some rainbows on her way home this week from visiting me here on the property. She went back to Georgia, and on her way back to Georgia, she took some beautiful pictures of some rainbows. And someone had told me, someone had communicated to me that, you know, I just don't say much about rainbows anymore. I don't talk about rainbows anymore. I don't post about rainbows anymore. I don't put rainbows in my statements or my speeches or talk about them at all anymore. I just feel uncomfortable about it. I said, why? I said, it's God's promise. Yeah, but his angle is that he was straight, and the rainbow symbolized the gay movement. That was his reasoning. And I immediately said, well, I say still, that's in you. You got to realize that if that's God's promise, and you want to talk about God's promise, you should be able to talk about God's promise. You shouldn't allow yourself, first of all, to hate anyone to the point to where you feel like you can't talk about a rainbow. I said, that's just not healthy. You don't need to do that. And at the same time, the rainbow, people can have 200 different reasons that they want to use a rainbow as symbolism, and they can get by with it. That's fine. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to talk about a rainbow. I mean, you might see a rainbow on my shirt. I'm straight, but I'm still going to wear a rainbow if I want to wear a rainbow. I'm not going to let anything stop me. And I'm, secondly, not going to judge anyone on the face of this earth. That's God's job. You know, love your neighbor as yourself. It doesn't say to go to your neighbor, get your neighbor to be exactly like you, and then love them like yourself. It doesn't say that. Rainbows are okay. God gave us the rainbow as a beautiful symbol. Remember, symbolic. So we have a symbolic nature. Humans do. We have a symbolic nature. Let's look at a way that over time the symbols change from meaning something to later on meaning something else. Look at the Confederate flag. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I am from the South. I'm from Georgia, live in North Carolina. I'm from the deep South, Southeast. And if you look at the history of the Confederate flag, you also have to look at the history of the St. Andrew's cross, which was a Christian symbol. It was a cross, okay? The St. Andrew's cross. You see the same pattern in the flag of the British flag. You see it in many of the flags throughout Europe, in fact, especially in the UK. And it's not necessarily what they call the stars and bars, the war flag during the Confederate War, or what we call the Civil War. But at the same time, many people in their heritage looked at the St. Andrew's cross, and they still do in many other countries, as a Christian symbol, not as a racist symbol of what it is depicted as today when you look at certain variations of the St. Andrew's cross, which would be, let's say, the Confederate flag, or some people call it the rebel flag. So symbolism changes over time. For years and years and years, the Confederate flag was seen as a heritage, not as a racist symbol. Then after desegregation and other movements and other things occurred in history in my lifetime, the Confederate flag became a racist symbol, and it was voiced so strongly that many of the states throughout the Southeast that had the Confederate flag, the St. Andrew's cross mixed in with it, and Georgia's flag was one of those. You had Mississippi, you have Alabama, you had a lot of other flags, North Carolina, South Carolina, all the different flags throughout the Southeast had that in it. And some have still had recent battles in regards to that. But what a lot of people don't realize, there were many different flags that were flown during the Confederate battle with the North during the Civil War. In fact, many of the states flew their own flag. They didn't even fly the bars, what do you call stars and bars, St. Andrew's cross flag. But at the same time, over time, history does this. There becomes a moment in history many times when people become psychologically offended by something because it associates something to them that is uncomfortable, or something that represents something that was not good or very bad, terrible for them. And slavery was obviously a very bad thing, and we know that. Absolutely. Not getting into the depths of it. Doesn't matter which side of that conversation you're on. What matters is that you realize that the way that people looked at things years ago compared to what they look at it now, and it's the same exact symbol. It's the same exact symbol. Churches have the same thing that happens all the time. We've seen churches make guidelines in their teachings, where they make rules and guidelines for their membership, and churches were very lenient. Some of them were very strict. Some pastors were very strict. Some pastors were very lenient. It just depended which one that you, what church you went to and what you seen and what you heard. Some churches you go to and all the women had to wear dresses, and all the, the women had to wear long hair, and you go to other churches, it could exchange some very interesting conversations and judgmentalism within the scenario. And we had a blast swimming together and had fun. And we went to the beach, went to all different types of things, went to the theater. I mean, we had a blast. At the same time, during those days, our church frowned upon going to movie theaters, frowned upon going to the beach, frowned upon going to public pools where boys swim with girls. We didn't adhere to that. But at the same time, after time went on, even the Church of God started being more lenient and changing its ways and changing its viewpoint and allowing certain things to happen that they did not allow to happen earlier on. Now, think about the bobbing of hair or a woman having short hair. This is how symbolism changes. And I brought this question up when I was in university because I went to Lee University, and I wanted to know more in depth of what that actually meant. Why did women, according to Paul, St. Paul, it says, doesn't nature itself, he said. This is St. Paul, who wrote over half the New Testament. He said, doesn't nature itself teach you that a man should have short hair and a woman should have long hair? But he also went on to say, but I have no contentions with you either way. In other words, I have no judgmentalism towards you either way. But yet, in the modern day churches that happened over the last 200 years, many of them made heavy, strenuous, strict rules that a woman could not cut her hair because of that scripture. And another one where it said a woman's hair is her glory. And it doesn't say that a woman is not supposed to cut her hair. It doesn't say that. Paul said, doesn't nature itself teach you that a woman should have long hair, and a man should have short hair? But if you look at that word custom, or you look at that word nature that's in that, and you go back to the original Greek, talking about the custom, now why did they say that then? Why was that an issue then? This was 2,000 years ago. Why was it an issue? And why are we making it an issue now in some churches? At least 40, 50 years ago when I was hearing it. It just so happened that 2,000 years ago, there were prostitutes in certain pagan temples, and they bobbed their hair off. They cut their hair extremely short. The prostitutes cut their hair extremely short. And custom itself back then would to tell people who are not prostitutes not to cut their hair short, so that they would not be affiliated with being a prostitute. It was just that simple of an explanation. And it makes sense. It totally makes sense. So at the same time, going on, symbolism, isn't it amazing that the church embraced symbolism of a woman having long hair as being a command of God, a symbolism of her holiness or stature? That gets serious. That gets really serious. And again, I'm not here to offend anyone. I'm here just to bring out the point of symbolism. Symbolism. And I'm going to get to my main point when it comes to homesteading here in a moment, because it actually relates to what we do here in our own freedoms today as we're building our homestead, building our farms, building our livelihoods out here to do the things that we do. Now, in the midst of all this symbolism, we see all kind of things happening politically in symbolism, where people, let's look at QAnon, for example. QAnon uses symbolism quite heavily, with a Q, and they use all this symbolism when it comes to all the memes they're putting out and all the different. I'm not saying I agree with everything that QAnon is doing or believe everything they're saying. It's amazing to me that people who do spread things spread just enough truth to make people grab hold of it, so that they can then teach them things that are not necessarily truthful, that are pushing a certain narrative or a certain message. Now, I'm not here for or against QAnon. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just got to do with the fact of it fits that genre of symbolism and constant feed of negative information consistently until people start believing certain things, mixing in enough things that we all know are true so that we grab hold of it and we say, okay, this is good. We need to be part of that. I, therefore, do not say and do not agree with anyone saying that I'm part of it. I'm not. But I am at least informed about what's going on out there to a certain point. I don't want to be informed of everything, and I don't want to be caught up and waste all my life listening to all the narratives, and I don't want to be absorbed by, I've got to listen to what is the next thing they're going to release. Oh, is QAnon going to release something else today? And another meme comes out, and more symbolism comes out, more symbolism comes out, and more flags come out, and more t-shirts come out, and more hats come out, and more memes come out. It's ridiculous, honestly, for a grown-up to get so caught up to where it absorbs our life. We don't need to allow that to happen. In fact, let's not get caught up in all this negative stuff and all the problems. Let's focus on recognizing the problems and focus 100% on solutions, not the problems. Not the problems. Now, I will say that memes themselves have become symbolism. We've seen it is a way for people to allow things to go viral and for their message to go viral, for their rents to go viral, and for their artwork and their ability on Photoshop to go viral. It's negative campaigning more than it is positive campaigning. You know, when people are trying to campaign for office, you have two sides of that campaign. You have people who are campaigning to win that seat in office, and you have people who are campaigning negative publicity, mudslinging, so that that person has enough mud out there that they hope that people in the public see more of the mud and judge that person based on the mud more than they do based off of what they could or could not do in office. And we see that a lot. I mean, that's modern day social media is modern day mudslinging, and we know that. And the media today is carrying definitely a certain narrative. But I want to say this. When I come here to my farm, and I've had it for 22 years, symbolism. I look across these mountains back here and I see the beautiful sunsets. The clouds turn into some of the most magical artwork that God has. It just melts my heart and makes me happy. When I looked at this piece of property, when I first bought it, the reason that I bought it was the mountain views, number one. Number two, it had a lake on it, and private lake, about a 2-acre lake, and deep lake, nice clean lake. Everything needed a lot of work to be done on the property, but I love water. I had considered buying some property, you know, on a beach instead of doing this right here. We had even looked at buying some property down in Costa Rica one time, and but instead of buying on a secluded beach somewhere, this became the dream. But what is the symbolism here? To me, the symbolism that I go by, that draws me, is when I look around and I see all the different things that God lays before me, that becomes my symbolism, my attachment to the gifts of God, where God gave us the gift of this earth to tend, to manage, to care for, to have usefulness for us, as we can feed our families from the land. We can enjoy nature by just walking through the forest. We can enjoy the flowers in the springtime and the flowers all the way through the fall season. We can enjoy our hikes through the trees when there's no leaves even on the trees, because the winter time the fall has taken the leaves, and through the winter we have no leaves, but yet at the same time we're able to see further in those views and see mountains further away because we don't have any leaves in our way. Every part of the seasons, every part of the year, every season has its blessings. The springtime, summertime, fall. Oh, I can't even say enough about autumn. Here in the Appalachian Mountains, I have some of the most beautiful, colorful, vibrant landscape, mountains to look across. When the leaves change and they become that additional piece of artwork that God gives me every year. My symbolism that I'm attached to. The symbolism that I'm attached to. I'll just tell you what it is. It's not anything out here that I can see, but it's the experience that I have, that I know for a fact that when I see something, it reminds me of God. That when I feel something, it reminds me of God. When I smell something, it reminds me of God. Even if I'm working in my honeybees and I get stung and I look down and the stinger. I got stung the other day, and the stinger was stuck in the tip of my finger, and I had to reach down and pull the stinger out, because when a honeybee stings you, that's its last day of life, because its stinger has a little barb on the end of it like a fish hook, and its stinger pulls out of it, and it dies after stinging you. But it's trying to protect the colony. But when that stinger, I'm pulling the stinger out, I'm looking at that, and what's going through my mind, symbolism, nature, reminds me how that God created that honeybee, and how God created the instinct in that honeybee, and how God created how everything works around us. You see, I don't believe in evolution. I believe in God. I believe in creationism. I don't believe in evolution. I don't believe that our universe has been around for billions of years. I mean, you can argue the point and you can debate the point, and I hope this doesn't turn you off as far as my channel here. In fact, I hope it causes you to subscribe to our channel, because everything we do here on the Homestead is God and family. That's what it's all about. To me, that's what matters, God and family. So when I look around me here, everything that I see that reminds me of God, it also reminds me symbolically that God has given us this, not only as just dirt and leaves and grass and trees and firewood or whatever, but He has given it to us for the well-being and the sustenance, so that I can take care of the family. He's given me a brain so I can manage business, so I can take care of family. When I see the things around me and the things that I've been able to acquire over the years, I look at it as it's symbolic of what God has blessed me with. Not because I've had luck. I don't even believe in luck. Luck? I don't believe in luck. Not at all. I believe in being fortunate because I'm a child of God. I believe in being blessed because I'm a child of God, but I don't believe in luck. I don't believe that something happens just because I'm lucky. Lucky, I mean, that's child's play. Now, some people out there, they're going to say, Jeff, you don't understand. You don't understand luck. You don't understand these planets lining up a certain way that's causing our future to be this way or that way or what have you. And I mean, listen, you believe your way. I believe my way. But I truly believe that God has my destiny in His hands. It doesn't matter how many planets out there, how many times they line up a certain way. Whatever happens out there in the universe, God created it. God knows the future. God knows me. God knew every hair on my head before I was even born. Wow. So when I think about that, and I think about how that sometimes we get so judgmental about symbolisms today, we're living in an emoji world, folks. We're living in emoticons. We communicate with emoticons. We communicate with memes. We can't type a sentence without putting smiley faces and hearts and tears and whatever else in there. I mean, my goodness, if you're on social media, you have an entire library of emoticons that you can put into your sentences so that you can communicate without even saying words. And if you're not using words, you may even be using, some type of acronym to represent a group of words with just a few letters. We've moved into symbolism in a different way than what I recognize as the symbolisms that mean something to me. My symbolisms are not idols. My symbolisms don't have enough weight to them to be an idol. I'm not going to get offended if your flag has a rainbow on it. I'm not going to get offended if your flag has stars and bars on it. I'm not going to get offended if your flag has whatever on it. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Now, I do have a patriotic attachment to our flag, the American flag. When I see our American flag, that symbolic meaning that it has to me is because I grew up in a military family. My father was a Navy man. My son served in Afghanistan. I'm surrounded by military, surrounded by it. And when you've seen so many family members at the funeral, in the grave, in the cemetery, when they're laying their casket in the ground and the American flag is laying over that casket, and you have a group of veterans or military personnel over there doing the gun salute, they're doing whatever they do there at the play the taps and do what needs to be done at a funeral. And they fold that flag and they give it to the widow, or they give it to the spouse, or they give it to a child. Yes, it bothers me when I see someone burning the flag. It bothers me when I see someone disrespecting the flag, but I don't worship the flag. There's a difference between honoring and worshiping. I honor this earth, and I honor the dirt. I honor the trees. I care about the environment, but I don't worship it. I care about it because it's a gift from God. And when I look at it and I partake of it, it reminds me, when I smell the flowers on a Cherokee rose, it reminds me of God. When I feel a thorn against my arm when I'm picking blackberries, it reminds me of God. When I taste those blackberries, or I taste the blueberries, or I eat cucumbers out of my garden, or I eat squash out of my garden, or I eat corn out of my garden, or beans out of my garden, it reminds me of the blessings of God. I just want you to see something that it reminds me of God. It reminds me of God's blessings. It reminds me of God's beauty. But look how beautiful that is. That's not some of the greatest colors that we see sometimes here on the homestead. But to me, that is God's beauty. The beauty of the sunset. Start seeing the beauty of it all. Anyway, I wish that I was a better camera person, because if you could see what I see with my naked eye, this camera is not picking up what I can see. We have some of the most beautiful sunsets up here that I have ever seen anywhere in the world, and I've been to 70-something countries. God has blessed me, and when I see those sunsets and I see those clouds that look like they're on fire, or the sunrises where it looks like those clouds are just on fire, and I hear the geese flying over behind me, and I see the moon that's just a little sliver of a moon up here in the sky, and I'm filling the lake up. The lake, I had to empty it because we had a bad lightning storm, and I'm going to have a video on that soon that I'm going to be sharing some details about all that, so I won't go into a lot of depth on that. The lake's about halfway filled right now, and I'm excited about the lake getting filled back up. We'll still have time to get some good swims in before it gets cold weather this year, and I'm blessed. Welch Mountain, Welch Family Homestead. This is God's blessings. God's blessings. And you see this boy right here? This is my big boy right here. He's my good boy. He is the best dog, Chevy, anyone could ever have. And I just don't know what I would do without him. Anyway, God bless you all, and I'll see you next time. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and share with anyone you can. Hope that these talks mean something and cause you to think, cause you to look at things differently, and to not get so caught up. Today's message was about, don't get so caught up in symbolism. In fact, look at the things around you and realize that the things that you see around you, it's not about the symbolism, it's about the blessings that God has given us. What means more than anything else is God and family. God and family. And friends. And friends. God sometimes gives us relatives, but we choose our family. Our family goes beyond who we're related to many times. And it's because of our bonds with people. And one of the best bonds that you can have with someone is to share our walk and our journey. Because sometimes your journey can help someone else to determine their journey. God bless you from Welch Family Homestead.